Okay, so Joel, you mentioned Trammell Crow Company, and I got to bring this up. I mean, one of the most familiar stories to me in your book, really touched my heart. It talked about the frothy real estate market in 1986, of which you and I both were living. You said in the book that you had a grim premonition that, how long are the markets going to stay good? The company had over $10 billion in debt, amongst all the partnerships. Frankly, and you had an owner that said, "I'll never sell. I don't like to sell." And you felt that the company should be selling assets, pruning assets, paying down debt, and the like, right? To be honest, I was in the same position in 2007, with my partner, who was the CEO at the time, and that didn't end well either. So you said in your book that you wish you would have run toward the fire, and confronted Trammell, the owner, basically the largest partner, face to face, and that your mismanagement of that conflict to this day was your worst professional judgment. Can you talk a little bit about that situation?
Yeah, first, let me just say that I had a father who in World War II was a bomb disposal officer on a carrier, and it was hit by 5 kamikazes in the Battle of Iwo Jima. And as he would tell this story, his punchline would be, "Run toward the fire." Where there's smoke, there's fire. Where there's fire, there's danger. Be the person that runs toward the fire. So I had recognized this problem, and I actually said, boy, with the 86 tax law changing, with the overbuilding in office space and everything, it's a problem. And I mentioned it, but kind of I was young. I was a CFO when I was still in my 20s. And so here I was with this iconic figure. And so I was tentative. I kind of knew. So finally I wrote a memo, and I called the office buildings the idle oil rigs. And when I couldn't get a rise on that, I actually left and moved over. You may not remember this, Walt, but I moved over to our residential company, and I became the managing partner at Trammell Crow Residential. And I realized that Trammell had fired its managing partner 6 or 8 months before. And I flew over to Atlanta to meet with him, and I realized this guy totally gets it. So I hired him back to replace me. And and Trammell didn't push back.
So didn't push back on that.
Didn't push back. So here was Ron Terwilliger, who was wonderful, running. I came back and I said, I don't want to finance these office buildings anymore. So I was asked to come back in, and I said, I just can't do it. So Don Williams invited me to come in as a co-managing partner with him. And a few days later, he came back in to say, I'll stay the managing partner and you become the co-managing partner. And I didn't know the airline industry yet, but being a co-pilot is not the easiest place to direct the flight plan. Mm-hmm. So after 4 months in the right-hand seat, I actually left. I resigned and moved to the West Coast. And a little bit like you, Walt, I ended up getting called back in about a year later to become the managing partner for a few years to kind of manage the turnaround. But I could have done it so much better. I mean, knowing what I do know today, I could have done so much better job.
Yeah, but but the flip side of that, I understand maybe it was your worst professional judgment, but you were at a certain point in time in your career. You were young, and that would have been difficult.